Hey everyone, welcome back. So, got a few more stories to tell from growing up in Duluth. I have a lot of fond memories from playing in creeks there, obviously, as you could tell. But I remember Lester Creek being one of my favorite places to go cliff jumping. There was a trestle bridge, this train bridge that all of us high schoolers used to go to, and it's a 60-foot drop down into the river. And I remember like kind of daring each other to jump off the top rail there. This one building out in Lake Superior was really fun. We called it the Ice House. And it's probably, I don't know, 100 or 200 feet offshore or something. So you had to swim out into deep, Lake Superior water to get to it, climb up this building, and then you could hang out at the top. And it would only ever be us high schoolers out there. But I remember one time my buddy Miko had the bright idea to try to do this in February with all the chunks of ice floating around in Lake Superior in 32-degree water. Now, something you have to understand about Miko is he was a very proud Scandinavian, even more so than me. He was half Finnish, half Norwegian. I'm only like a quarter Norwegian, so he always had something to prove, I think. But I'm pretty sure he won that contest, but neither of us made it out to that building. We both tried jumping into the lake and immediately started freezing up. And it was all we could do to get back into water that wasn't over our head to scramble back onto the shore. So we had a lot of time, swimming and climbing on stuff. At some point later in high school, I don't remember who of us thought it up, but we started building climbing, and we would go out at night because it was pretty illegal as far as I knew. We called it bouldering, and we'd find these bouldering problems, kind of a play off of bouldering, but these little one-story wonders where you would climb maybe 20, 30 feet up to get to the top of the roof, and we'd climb like the brick facade or lie back a drain pipe or anything we could do to get up to the roofs. And then once you're on the roof, we could kind of explore around, and we had a great time doing that. Sometimes we'd camp out on the top. A lot of times the goal was to get to the fire escape, because if you could get to the fire escape, then you could get all the way to the top of the tallest buildings in Duluth. And sometimes we learned how to break and enter without breaking, and we never stole anything or broke anything for that matter. But we'd like to, try to figure out how to get into these windows of these buildings and just kind of explore around and just have a good time. So the other thing I have to talk about is spelunking. This is something that was introduced to me through the Scouts, and I started talking about that story. Certainly the most memorable spelunking adventure for me was discovering that new cave system, which was really unique. But I remember getting into the bottom of this cave, and we had discovered that clay plug in the back of the cave. And what a clay plug meant was that there had previously been water that had deposited sediment, and we put it upon ourselves to dig away at this thing and see what we could uncover. And I think Ted had convinced us that this was going to probably lead somewhere. So on following trips, we started bringing down shovels and sleds and a rope and air duct system and started digging away at this thing. And eventually we had something like a 100-foot wormhole, which was really scary. And this is one of the things about caving that was really interesting and unique, is learning to control fear in tight spaces, learning to control claustrophobia. And it was wild. I remember one time one of my buddies getting freaking out in this other wormhole passage, and sometimes you'd have to exhale to be able to squeeze through these tiny little passageways. And I remember him freaking out, and he couldn't move. He got completely stuck, and probably, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes or something, we had to just sort of talk to him and try to calm him down so that his muscles would relax enough so that he could slither through. But anyway, on this new cave system, we had dug a 100-foot wormhole passage, and I remember going to the end of the wormhole, just digging out, and then I would deposit the sediment onto the sled, and then we would trolley out the clay. Eventually, like I was saying before, we were able to punch through into this new room, and I unfortunately wasn't there on the day of the big reveal, but I remember going there on subsequent trips and seeing this new room that we, fully limestone chamber with stalactites and everything. It was wild, and again, the feeling of being in terrain that no one had been on before. I wanted more of that for sure. So And I kind of took my caving adventures urban a little bit. A lot of times we found the storm sewers in Duluth were great ways to explore the city underground. And there was all sorts of tight little spots and climbs and interesting adventures to be had under the city streets in Duluth. Towards the end of senior year, I started realizing that I was going to need to move on. I started to have the itch to start traveling and seeing what the world looked like. I had really fallen in love with climbing, and I knew that Colorado had more of it. I had taken a trip with my family out to Colorado and seen Garden of the Gods, and I knew that there was a ton to do out there. Unfortunately, I had forgotten my harness when I went out there, but I knew that was kind of where my next step was going to be. So I guess the whole endeavor of climbing, it was super fun, and I was having a blast, and I knew that there was more climbing opportunity to be had, but I think because of the culture I grew up in and kind of what my peers were doing, I ended up succumbing to peer pressure a little bit. I feel like I kind of thought that climbing, as fun as it wasn't like something that I could do for my lifestyle. It wasn't going to pay the bills. It wasn't something that felt like very responsible. So unfortunately, I kind of did what all my peers were doing, and I signed up for college. Thankfully, I was able to go for free. On the next video, I'll talk about transitioning to college and kind of where life took me next. So thanks for joining me. I'll talk to you guys next time.